Chapter 1156. Nearly Perfect Defense. Zhang Yi's attack did not stop at all. Li Changgong also knew that he could not drag it on. Because Zhang Yi's attack would not cause any damage to him personally, but the supernatural power in Li Changgong's body would only be used less and less, and he could not bear the consumption of physical strength. After all, he was just a mortal. Li Changgong no longer avoided and decided to confront Zhang Yi head-on. He raised his right hand, and the combat uniform on his right arm suddenly bulged, and a crossbow the size of a palm popped out. But when the crossbow was aimed at Zhang Yi, he felt a little threatened. It seems that if I get hit, my life will be gone. Li Changgong's I am God's will is an ability that is almost like a rule. Under its attack, all defenses are meaningless. If Zhang Yi's body is hit at high speed, even a small touch, the huge power contained in it will shatter Zhang Yi's body. Swish! The crossbow arrow cut through the sky. I don't know what technology it was made of, but its speed is so fast that it is difficult to describe in words. Even Zhang Yi's thunder may not be able to catch up. This speed didn't even give Zhang Yi time to react. Zhang Yi watched his head being pierced. Coming back to his senses, the intelligent system of the combat suit immediately locked onto Li Changgong's right hand. At the moment when the crossbow was about to be fired, Zhang Yi had already pulled away in advance. The crossbow arrow broke through the air, sweeping out a long corridor in the air. Behind Zhang Yi, a dimensional door was silently shattered. Zhang Yi's eyes narrowed slightly, thinking, how dangerous. But he didn't know how gloomy Li Changgong's heart was at this time. He thought that his ability was invincible. However, Zhang Yi's ability was even more perverted than his. In front of an opponent with the ability to predict the future, any sneak attack and attempt to take advantage of loopholes are meaningless. He can predict all my attacks, but as long as my attack speed is fast enough, even if his brain can perceive it, his body can't keep up. Or use an ability to attack, even if he knows it clearly, he can't avoid it. Li Changgong analyzed the current situation in an instant. Unfortunately, it is easy to understand the truth, but it is extremely difficult to do it. At present, there is a distance of more than 10 kilometers between Zhang Yi and him. Zhang Yi, who has already tested his background, will not give him a chance to close the distance. He wants to catch up with Zhang Yi, but in terms of ability, his teleportation speed is only 1/3 of Zhang Yi's. Similarly, if he wants to escape, he will be firmly stuck by Zhang Yi. A feeling of being stuck by oxhide candy appeared deeply in Li Changgong's heart. At present, he has only one choice. That is to bet on how many bullets are left in Zhang Yi's arsenal. If Zhang Yi's ammunition is used up, he can no longer use this rogue method to attack, and Li Changgong doesn't care about other means of attack. But I can't win in that way. Li Changgong's heart was full of gloom. Facts have proved that the most ideal situation is that he uses up Zhang Yi's ammunition. He can't kill Zhang Yi, and Zhang Yi can't kill him either. The two ended in a draw. However, his plan to suppress Zhang Yi and gain fame was in vain, and at most he would not lose face. But he was a descendant of a general family, but he only fought a tie with a warehouse manager in a seaside city, and there was no glory at all. For the first time, he had the same feeling about Zhang Yi as many of Zhang Yi's opponents. This guy is too cheating. How can he survive so long? Li Changgong had to admit one thing. He misjudged Zhang Yi's strength, and he didn't expect Zhang Yi to have the ability to predict the future. When real masters fight, any slight omission will affect victory or defeat, and even life and death. Therefore, Li Changgong now has no way to come up with a way to deal with Zhang Yi in a short time. But he will not admit defeat. He chooses to confront. The worst result is a draw. Although Li Changgong said so, he did not defend blindly. He rushed to the sky, stepped on the condensed air with feigned step, and quickly pressed towards Zhang Yi. The war of attrition is a test of patience and foundation. The two who seemed to have no loopholes might reveal flaws in a long battle. They both knew it very well. No matter who it was, as long as they revealed a short loophole, the other party would not miss it and end the battle. Zhang Yi. Li Changgong shouted Zhang Yi's name angrily, and the long sword in his hand cut through the sky, and the sharp sword light soared into the sky. But he had no time to attack Zhang Yi because he needed to deal with the ammunition that was pouring down from the 3,000-dimensional gates like a violent storm. The barrage poured down like a waterfall, and the whole world was dyed a fiery red color, which was extremely beautiful and dangerous. Zhang Yi certainly knew Li Changgong's purpose, and he would not give Li Changgong a chance to get close. As long as he kept consuming, Li Changgong would not be defeated, and he would definitely be invincible. The damage was great, and the energy in his body was seriously lost. But Zhang Yi was still in a perfect posture. At that time, he would be able to defeat Li Changgong with absolute advantage. Li Changgong ascended to the sky, and every time he took a step forward, Zhang Yi took 3 steps back. The distance between the two people was not shortened, but gradually widened. But Li Changgong did not stop, but continued to rise into the air. Until he entered the cloud, his figure suddenly disappeared in the thick cloud. Zhang Yi immediately understood Li Changgong's plan. He planned to use the thick clouds as a cover to avoid Zhang Yi's barrage attack, and then approach Zhang Yi to launch an attack. Moreover, in the case of being unable to lock Li Changgong, Zhang Yi's tracing of all things also lost its effect for a short time. Shang Dawen couldn't help but say when he saw this scene, smart. In order to avoid the attack of chaos, Go Chen must find an object as a cover to avoid his lock. And the thick clouds everywhere in the sky are the best cover. Zhang Yi stopped shooting, and his eyes quickly flashed through the surrounding clouds. The clouds within a range of more than 10 kilometers around him had long been stirred up by the surging firepower. In other words, it was impossible for Li Changgong to get close suddenly. But Zhang Yi also couldn't lock Li Changgong's position. Shwa! A sharp knife light flashed from behind Zhang Yi and rushed straight to Zhang Yi's back. This angle was very tricky, but Li Changgong didn't know that tracing all things not only has the ability to actively predict. As an upgraded version of Time Echo, it can automatically sense all the upcoming dangers for Zhang Yi. At the critical moment, Zhang Yi's instinct allowed him to dodge the attack and quickly distance himself. Li Changgong failed to hit and immediately disappeared into the clouds. His brows frowned. Even such an attack was noticed by him. He felt a little gloomy in his heart. God knows how desperate he was when facing such an opponent. In his eyes, Zhang Yi had become an existence that was almost impossible to kill. Chapter 1157 Cold Ice Rain. Happy New Year! The next battle became a fierce battle between Zhang Yi and Li Changgong. The most tragic and dangerous battle took place only in the first 10 minutes. The two of them countered each other's moves. If there was any omission, they would be defeated instantly. A 15,000-point time and space alien and a 16,000-point space alien are both the top combat forces of Huaxi country. But when both sides opened their cards and started fighting, no one could quickly do anything to the other side, and it became a long tug-of-war. Li Changgong held his breath in his heart. He wanted to drag it until Zhang Yi used up all the ammunition in his hand. In this way, Zhang Yi could not cause effective trouble to him. On the other hand, Zhang Yi's expression became more and more relaxed. With every minute that passed, his chances of winning would increase by 1 point. After understanding Li Changgong's ability, Zhang Yi was already invincible. As long as he was not in a hurry and did not commit suicide, he would exhaust all of Li Changgong's physical strength and abilities step by step. The winner must be him. Li Changgong's mood gradually became impatient. He didn't have the ability to stay in the air for a long time like Zhang Yi, so although he relied on the cover of the clouds to sneak attack Zhang Yi a few times, he was caught by the passive ability of tracing all things, so Zhang Yi avoided the sneak attack. Helplessly, he fell from the sky, preparing to adjust his posture before launching a second round of attacks. But it was still the same sentence. After all the cards were revealed, an opponent who was not a big threat to Zhang Yi could only watch Zhang Yi torture him. Now, my turn has just begun. Zhang Yi showed a playful smile at the corner of his mouth. From beginning to end, he was basically focusing on defense and did not use any truly effective offensive means. But now, the offense and defense have changed. Zhang Yi waved his hand, and suddenly 100 heavy artillery appeared from the alien space. But the muzzle was not aimed at Li Changgong on the ground, but at the surrounding heavy gray clouds like mountains. Fire, Zhang Yi said softly, and the intelligence system controlled 100 heavy artillery, making a deafening sound and shooting at the clouds. Li Changgong clenched his two swords, looking up at the sky with sharp eyes. Although he did not take down Zhang Yi, he was not afraid of Zhang Yi's attack. Nothing can be cut off under the two swords. But the expected violent storm did not come. The heavy artillery fired round after round, but after the roar, there was no movement in the sky. Li Changgong frowned and became more cautious. He knew that Zhang Yi would not do anything meaningless. But Qin Shigong and others who were in the god's perspective saw this scene very clearly. Han Shanzhua asked puzzledly, "What is he going to do?" Jiang Han stared at the battlefield nervously and said in a deep voice, "It looks like he is planning to snow. Artificial snow." Han Shanzhua was slightly startled when he heard this. Snowflakes were flying outside the window. How could snowfall be needed in this weather? Zhang Yi was not an ice and snow alien, so what was the use of snowfall? Qin Shigong seemed to have thought of something, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Maybe it's not snowfall? Is it hail? Han Shanzhua asked. Qin Shigong shook his head. Let's keep watching. In short, there must be a reason for the battle between Ypsilon. Sure enough, not long after, the sky really moved. The dark clouds after the bombardment surged up, and soon the clouds became thicker and thicker, as if they were about to fall down. Hualala! Suddenly, heavy rain poured down on the ground in the strong wind. This sudden heavy rain caught everyone off guard, and even Li Changgong was a little stunned. Rain? They had almost forgotten the existence of such a natural phenomenon. In such cold weather, there is only heavy snow or hail. How can there be room for rain? But at this time, the rain falling from the sky is obviously not fake. A heavy rain suddenly poured down on the northern plain of Jibei, covering an area of up to hundreds of kilometers. Han Shanzhua's eyes widened. Fuck. It's really raining? How did this guy do it? Shang Dawen explained. It's not difficult. Just add some anti-freezing ingredients to the catalyst. But if you do this, the land will be polluted. He shook his head. This is the territory of Shengjing district. Fortunately, no one is farming now, otherwise it would be a pity. But what's the use of rain? Han Shanzhua asked lazily. Shang Dawen smiled and said, Gochin can't fly, so the rain is enough to give him a headache. Because this rain can't fall on Hun Dun's head. And, he said with a gleam in his eyes, what if it's ice rain? Li Changgong did start to get annoyed at this time. The heavy rain quickly covered the land around him. The original ice and snow began to melt under the influence of the rain. The ground under his feet was no longer solid, and even began to become muddy. And after the heavy rain fell to the ground, it merged with the snow layer on the ground, and then quickly froze. The ground was wet and slippery, and it looked like a large ice skating rink. After their round of destruction, the land had long been in chaos. The mud, ice, and snow, and now the heavy rain, made the ground environment extremely bad. Although the combat uniform Li Changgong wore was made of waterproof material, and the mask on his face would not be blurred by the rain. But the movements under his feet were obviously greatly affected. There was another thing. Li Changgong hated rainy days. Whenever it rained, his mood would become a little gloomy, and he would easily become irritable. High in the sky, Zhang Yi summoned countless guns and cannons again. Be careful of the slippery ground, Zhang Yi said with a smile, and then the guns and cannons around him began to bombard fiercely. The probability of an Ypsilon-level alien dying tragically because of slipping on the ground is extremely low, but it is not impossible. There is a slippery ground frozen by ice and rain everywhere. The faster he goes, the easier it is to overturn. Facts have proved that the two legs of the Ypsilon-level aliens are no different from the two legs of ordinary people, and the friction coefficient of the shoes they wear is not much different. At this time, Zhang Yi's attack came again, which was like a double whammy for the irritated Li Changgong. Start the anti-skid mode, adapt to the terrain, and the ice formed by rain and snow. Li Changgong's portable intelligence system adjusted the state of his combat uniform for him at the first time, and the anti-skid structure of his combat boots extended to prevent him from slipping on the ground. But in such an environment, the impact on Li Changgong was still huge. He had to slow down his speed and guard against Zhang Yi's attack in the sky. How can I break the situation? Li Changgong's eyes were solemn, and his brain was running fast. The best advice provided by the intelligence system for him was to escape from this battlefield and find weapons for long-range combat before joining the battle. But now the two people are in a decisive battle. If he escapes, it will be tantamount to admitting defeat, and he will become a joke in front of all the representatives of the 6 major districts. He was unwilling to accept this result. Chapter 1158, Li Changgong's Indecision. The rainstorm poured down, and the ground became muddy. The snow and water mixed with the soil turned the ground into a swamp. Li Changgong had to deal with Zhang Yi's endless attacks in the rainstorm. He never thought that one day, he, a Epsilon-level alien, would be troubled by these hot weapons. Hot weapons made of gunpowder and steel should have disappeared from his world. But 6-digit hot weapons are not a concept. A terrible idea emerged in Li Changgong's heart. Should I talk to Zhang Yi? If the two of them stopped at this time and fought a tie, at least he would not suffer too much loss, and it would be acceptable in terms of face. Li Changgong was shocked and didn't know why he had such a terrible idea. He is the dignified king of the Northwest, a descendant of a general. And now, he has to make peace with a warehouse manager, a person who is willing to design and harm his allies for his own interests? No. His dignity absolutely does not allow him to do this. But if he doesn't do this, how can he break the situation? Li Changgong was indeed a tactical genius. He was also smart enough to think of how to use his advantages to win on the battlefield. However, at this time, he no longer had any advantages in front of Zhang Yi. First of all, he misjudged Zhang Yi's ability index and did not know that Zhang Yi had time-related abilities, which put him at a disadvantage. He also did not expect that Zhang Yi actually had a channel to know his abilities. This feeling made him deeply suspicious. Something is wrong. It's too wrong. It's like he completely understands what my abilities are. Otherwise, how could he make such a weird preparations? In the battle with Zhang Yi, although Zhang Yi seemed a little flustered at the beginning, there was no problem in dealing with it. Instead, in the end, as if it was a formula, his abilities were suppressed to death. The haze in Li Changgong's heart became heavier. He began to wonder who leaked the information about him. But he didn't have much time to think. Zhang Yi stood in the sky and continued to bombard him. A little bit of metal material can easily make cheap firearms, as well as heavy artillery with slightly more complicated workmanship and materials. Add a little bit of gunpowder and metal to make ammunition. This has never been a precious thing and can even be called cheap. So Zhang Yi doesn't feel bad about using it at all. And using them to force an Epsilon-level alien into a desperate situation is really wonderful. Zhang Yi held 2 white owls in his hands. His real killer has not been used yet. He needs to wait until Li Changgong is forced into a desperate situation and then give him a fatal blow. Anyway, he has plenty of ammunition, but Li Changgong's ability is limited. The battle continued, and time passed unknowingly for an hour. During this time, Li Changgong tried more than a dozen times to attack the sky. But he was completely crushed by Zhang Yi in terms of speed, and he had no chance to get close to Zhang Yi. Even if he could occasionally find a seemingly good opportunity to launch an offensive. But under the ability of tracing the tracks of all things, all attacks will be dodged by Zhang Yi in time. Without such a large-scale, powerful attack method, it is impossible to completely lock down all directions of Zhang Yi's escape and launch an effective attack on him. Until this moment, the people watching the battle also understood a little. Li Changgong, he has already lost. In fact, he can also choose to escape. He has the ability of 6 realms without distance. If he is determined to escape, Zhang Yi will hardly pose a big threat to him. But this is a battle, and the two of them are fighting in front of the representatives of the 6 major regions. Escape will not kill you, but you will definitely lose. With Li Changgong's current status and pride, he certainly can't choose to lose this way. Qin Shigong put his hands behind his back and saw the outcome of this battle. Li Changgong couldn't break Zhang Yi's defense, and he could only be exhausted to death. The victory or defeat is determined. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. Chaos is hidden so deeply. It seems that what he got in the fog valley of Qingdao is more than I thought. Qin Shigong frowned. He was a little worried that what Zhang Yi got in the fog valley was not even inferior to what they found in the depths of the Qinling mountains. Otherwise, how can an Epsilon-level mutant directly increase his ability index by 2,000 points in just half a year? This guy is really a loser. Han Shanzhua couldn't help but sigh, looking at Zhang Yi in the projection with a complicated look. If it were him, with Zhang Yi's strength, he would definitely fight back when Li Changgong provoked him at the beginning, and it is even possible that they would fight on the spot. But Zhang Yi obviously has enough strength to deal with Li Changgong, but he is still trying his best to avoid fighting. It is also because of this that Li Changgong feels that he is very weak and has been afraid of fighting. Looking at Zhang Yi in the air at this time, he is calm and unhurried, like a cat playing with a mouse. A strong feeling rose in everyone's heart. This guy is really terrible. He is so steady that it makes people feel terrible. However, one person at the scene was in a very bad mood. That was Jiang Han. Originally, Li Changgong stood up for her and Baihu, but now he has fallen into danger, which she naturally did not want to see. Thinking of this, she gritted her teeth and suddenly came to Qin Shigong's side. Qin Shui, there will be no result if they continue to fight like this. If someone really dies, it will be a loss for the entire Huashu kingdom, and it will not be conducive to the unity of the 6 regions. Can you come forward to mediate and let them stop? She knew very well how important this battle was to Li Changgong. Losing to Zhang Yi would have a huge impact on his already unstable position in the northwest region. Simply being strong in force cannot win people's hearts. Otherwise, the commanders of the 6 regions are the strongest in their respective regions. Qin Shigong heard this, and a meaningful smile appeared on his face. He stood with his hands behind his back, smiling, and said calmly, "I'm afraid this is inappropriate. The 2 of them are determined to see who is better, so why not give them this opportunity to resolve the conflict at once? It also saves them from having any regrets. As for whether there will be risks in the fight between the 2 of them, you don't have to worry about it. I can guarantee that there will be no casualties." Qin Shigong was quite polite to Jiang Han. Otherwise, with Jiang Han's current status, he really had no right to make such a request to Qin Shigong. What's more, as a veteran military leader, Qin Shigong was not used to Li Changgong's youthful vigor. In his heart, he also hoped that Zhang Yi could suppress Li Changgong. Otherwise, with Li Changgong's domineering attitude, he might one day be thinking about the position of the 1st district of Xinjiang. Chapter 1159 Gradually Disintegrating. Jiang Han's help to Qin Shigong was fruitless, and her face was slightly red. She quietly clenched her fists, and also realized that she was insignificant at this time. Compared to her, Paji Gasang next to her was much smarter. He came to Xinjiang this time with only a pair of ears, just listening and not speaking. On the battlefield, Li Changgong had been beaten to the point of losing his temper. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't. At this moment, he finally understood the origin of the title, Absolute Defense. It was not groundless, but a real defensive ability that made people disgusted. If Zhang Yi's defense could not be broken, it would be Zhang Yi's turn to break his defense. The battle lasted for 3 hours. Zhang Yi strolled leisurely, standing high in the sky, manipulating firearms to continuously fire ammunition. Li Changgong couldn't stop his hands and feet, and he was as embarrassed as a drowned dog. Although his superpowers were extremely strong, his body was just an ordinary mortal body after all. The continuous swinging of the knife made his arms begin to become heavy. Puff, puff, puff. Finally, bullets began to penetrate his knife net and land on his combat uniform. It was not painful. The top combat uniform of Huashu country had a defense that could withstand direct fire from small artillery shells. But this phenomenon made Li Changgong's heart sink. Once the gap in the defense was opened, Zhang Yi's attack would be like a river bursting its banks, flooding him. Li Changgong gritted his teeth, endured the discomfort of his body, and continued to increase the speed of his knife. How can I break through his defense? Li Changgong roared frantically in his heart. When the bullets landed on his combat uniform, everyone understood that Li Changgong had no other choice. He was just holding on to his dignity and was unwilling to admit defeat. Jiang Han turned his head away, unable to bear to see this scene. Zhang Yi's smile became even stronger, then continued. The barrage rain that had been falling for more than an hour suddenly increased in intensity and began to fall towards Li Changgong with a more fierce offensive. Li Changgong's pupils couldn't help shrinking. He couldn't imagine how much ammunition there was in Zhang Yi's space. Zhang Yi would not tell him that it was half of the arsenal of the entire Jiangnan region. Li Changgong was still gritting his teeth to hold on. Another hour passed, and he was forced to inject himself with stimulants so that his body would not be so easily tired. But overdrawing physical energy will only make yourself more embarrassed when you are weak. Qin Shigong looked at him and shook his head, and even sighed. If this goes on, he may make history. Shang Dawen couldn't help asking, Qin Shui, what history? Qin Shigong smiled and said, the first Ypsilon in history to be killed by guns and cannons. Han Shanzhua couldn't help laughing. Jiang Han clenched his fists, and her eyes were full of helplessness. If she didn't understand her elder brother's character, she would have wanted to speak up and persuade Li Changgong to admit defeat. Li Changgong himself seemed to be awakening under the loss of physical energy. He knew that there was no point in continuing. Even if Zhang Yi used up all his ammunition, Zhang Yi was still in perfect condition. However, the supernatural power in his body had been greatly consumed. By that time, he still could not escape the end of defeat. Ding dong. Zhang Yi's communication device suddenly received a call request. Zhang Yi took a look and found that it was from Li Changgong. He raised his eyebrows and roughly understood what Li Changgong wanted to do. Zhang Yi answered the call. Hello, Li Changgong. Are you going to surrender? When Zhang Yi spoke, the battle was still going on. He would not give Li Changgong a chance to delay time. Li Changgong's voice came deeply. Zhang Yi, we have fought for so long, and no one can do anything to each other. There is no point in dragging it on, so let's stop here today. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. You mean you admit defeat? Li Changgong immediately said, Don't joke. I admit defeat. Don't admit defeat? Zhang Yi sneered. Then continue. Anyway, I also want to see how long you can hold on. If you keep playing like this, I can fight you for another 3 days and 3 nights. Although there was some exaggeration in Zhang Yi's words, Li Changgong couldn't help but tremble with fear. 3 days and 3 nights? Wouldn't that cost him his life? He was struggling to resist the rain of bullets around him while talking to Zhang Yi. This time we are even. I can double the 300 million supplies I promised you before. Zhang Yi's smile became even stronger. 300 million supplies? Since when did your reputation as the king of the Northwest only cost this much? Li Changgong said in a deep voice. Then how much do you want? Name a price. He was slightly relieved. As long as there is a price, then we can talk. He must not lose this battle, otherwise he will lose all his face. If he could exchange it with materials, of course he would. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes, and 2 different voices appeared in his heart. One was the voice he often heard in the past. The Jianghu is not about fighting and killing, but about human relationships. It will not do you any good to offend Li Changgong to death. There is no need to make enemies for yourself just for the sake of face. It is better to make a lot of money from him. However, there was also a second voice echoing in Zhang Yi's mind. It was Li Changgong who was arrogant and condescending to you when you, Zhang Yi, first arrived in Shengjing. He has never given you face. If you are willing to accept his conditions and reconcile now, even if there will be no loss, but can you really tolerate this tone? Zhang Yi looked down at Li Changgong. Through the intelligence system, he could see Li Changgong's condescending face. Suddenly, an impulse emerged in Zhang Yi's heart. He wanted to be willful for once. Perhaps in order to survive, He had been cautious for too long, which made him have a desire to be unbridled in his heart. No one is born superior. Zhang Yi let out a long breath and said so. Li Changgong frowned. What are you talking about? Don't you just want to bargain with me? Just name your price. This battle cannot decide life and death. They all know it in their hearts. What is affected is just face. But Li Changgong's face is very valuable. He is the supreme commander of the Northwest region, and he is also the son of a general with a noble status. On the contrary, Zhang Yi has an ordinary background, and his style of doing things is not famous. Li Changgong is sure that Zhang Yi will accept his conditions. But this time he guessed wrong. Zhang Yi is still young, and he occasionally wants to be willful. Zhang Yi's voice came with a teasing and cold voice. This time, I just want to slap your ugly face. The expression on Li Changgong's face froze for a moment. He heard clearly that Zhang Yi said, "Go to hell, Li Changgong." Chapter 1160. Falling Stars. Penguins are social animals. In the cold Arctic, they always move in groups, whether migrating, hunting, or raising offspring. But at a special time, among the penguins, there will occasionally be one that stops moving with the group when it suddenly looks at the distant mountains. It looks at the snow-capped mountains in the distance, and after a long silence, it suddenly leaves its group. It gave up the road to a more suitable living area and ran towards the distant snow-capped mountains. The snow-capped mountains in the distance are vaguely visible, seemingly very close, but actually very far away. And the penguins heading to the snow-capped mountains cannot get food, and this behavior is equivalent to suicide. But every penguin that chooses to leave the group and head for the snow-capped mountains will go forward without hesitation and never look back, until it dies on the road. People always have a sudden self at a certain moment. At that time, he may not be mature and rational enough and act for a simple ideal. But at least he lives freely and freely. Just like Zhang Yi at this moment. He was impulsive for once, and would rather give up the opportunity to obtain a large amount of supplies, and would rather have an unresolved feud with the Northwest King Li Changgong. He also wanted to slap Li Changgong in the face, so that Li Changgong would know that his proud origin and self-righteous face were insignificant and useless in Zhang Yi's eyes. Zhang Yi closed the channel of communication with Li Changgong, and there was nothing to talk about. Li Changgong's request for peace had proved one thing, and he was almost unable to hold on at this time. Zhang Yi finally raised the two guns in his hands and pointed them at the ground, at Li Changgong, who was full of astonishment but still holding on to his ridiculous dignity. Stars are falling. From the muzzle of his gun, black bullets burst out violently, like one dazzling black meteor after another, heading straight for Li Changgong. Zhang Yi didn't need to aim at all. Each one locked on Li Changgong's position. In an instant, thousands and tens of thousands of bullets transformed from void energy attacked the earth. Li Changgong's pupils shrank suddenly. He knew that Zhang Yi was about to start finishing. However, he, Li Changgong, would not give up so easily. Zhang Yi, you are worthy of winning against me. Li Changgong roared, raised his two swords, and a series of sword lights flew into the air, cutting down stars. However, the stars that were cut down did not disappear, but fell to the ground with a bang. Each dark star formed an extremely huge, deep pit on the earth. In a short moment, the area of nearly 10,000 meters around Li Changgong had turned into a huge valley. The heavy rain poured down without a moment's pause. There was no shortage of dark clouds in the sky, and the natural celestial phenomena became a weapon in Zhang Yi's hands. Li Changgong rushed left and right, struggling to resist Zhang Yi's continuous attacks. He suddenly discovered something. While fighting with him, Zhang Yi could also stuff things into his mouth. That was Yang Xia's upgraded superpower food, and Zhang Yi's superpower loss could also be restored at the fastest speed. But how could Li Changgong have such treatment? Even though he carried some drugs, he couldn't use them all the time, otherwise his body would be overdrawn. He struggled to resist the rainstorm and the dark stars. Even with a body that had been tempered for thousands of times, he was exhausted from constantly swinging his sword. His hands seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds, and he couldn't even hold the two long swords. Once the effect of the stimulant wore off, the sour and heavy feeling made his arms and legs feel like they were filled with lead. Puff, puff, puff. Bullets hit his combat uniform, and the sound was heavy, like the drumbeats hitting Li Changgong. His heart sank suddenly, and the long sword in his hand finally couldn't block all the bullets. Li Changgong hesitated in his heart, and he knew he had reached his limit. The hesitation in his heart would slow down the speed of his sword, and the bullets hitting him became more and more. Am I really going to lose? Li Changgong's blood ran cold, and for the first time in his life, he felt a huge fear. It was the regret and shame of his dignity being completely swept away and being slapped in the face. Thinking back to the time when he had forced Zhang Yi to duel with him, he wished he could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. But Zhang Yi would not show mercy to his men. Take advantage of your illness to kill you. More large-caliber artillery began to bombard Li Changgong. If this thing hits the body, even if he has the top combat uniform, it will be blown to pieces quickly. Jiang Han looked anxious. Qin Shui, let them stop. Qin Shigong said leisurely, but the winner has not been decided yet. Unless Go Chun admits defeat himself. Hearing this, Jiang Han immediately used the communication equipment to pass the message to Li Changgong. Brother, admit defeat. Don't fight anymore. Li Changgong's heart was already desperate, but Jiang Han's words were like salt in his wounds, causing him a sharp pain in his heart. Jiang Han was his childhood sweetheart, a sister who had admired him since childhood. What did he say to Jiang Han at the beginning? He was full of vigor and confidence and told Jiang Han that he would definitely teach Zhang Yi a lesson and avenge her and Baihu. But what about now? His ugly plight was completely seen by Jiang Han. Li Changgong gritted his teeth. He suddenly felt his throat tighten and couldn't utter the three words, I give up. Zhang Yi had a mocking smile on his face. The rain of bullets around him did not decrease at all, and his attacks became more fierce. Just when Li Changgong was about to give up, Zhang Yi took the initiative to communicate with him. Li Changgong, beg for mercy. As long as you beg for mercy and admit defeat, I won't bully you. I hope you will remember what happened today and stop thinking that you are so powerful. Without a good family background, you are actually nothing. Come on, admit defeat quickly, kneel down and say you are wrong. I really want to see your stubborn face showing an expression of unyielding but having to surrender. Zhang Yi's sarcasm made Li Changgong's eyes red. He raised his head and roared, Zhang Yi, I will kill you. Shua. He soared into the sky again, under the rain of bullets. At this time, he had lost his mind and wanted to fight Zhang Yi to the death. But what he waited for was Zhang Yi's more fierce attack. You seem to have misunderstood something. You are not a character in a comic book. Anger can't make you stronger. How about you bring back some memories? Maybe it can enhance your combat effectiveness. Zhang Yi's mocking voice continued to ring in Li Changgong's ears, and his two guns merged together and aimed at Li Changgong, who was soaring into the air. It's almost over. An extremely powerful force emanated from Zhang Yi's body. This momentum was also something that no one had ever felt from Zhang Yi. This was the most powerful attack Zhang Yi could launch now. A huge vortex appeared behind him, and the power of the void spread out from it, as if a huge abyss door had opened in the sky. Infinite power gathered on Zhang Yi like a huge underwater wave, spreading along his arms and then pouring into his two dark silver-white owls. The next moment, a huge dark halberd emerged from the double guns. Halberd of Destruction. Thanks viewers, please subscribe if not already. We'll post more videos soon.